There's nothing fancy here. We just talked a little bit about it, but you got to be able to do a push-up, right? If you can't do a push-up where your shoulder and hip move together at the same time, right? Dips, advanced gymnastics, all that stuff is irrelevant, okay? And again, this is that foundational stuff of talking about midline stability. What do we see happen often when people try push-ups? Can you see me on the ground here, by the way? But here is the big thing, guys. Quality movement where your shoulder and hip move together, okay? It's a lot harder than it looks. You gotta focus on it. The number one recommendation I give, I did a little video recently, is incline, which people hate doing in class for some reason. But reinforcing good movement patterns where your body doesn't move will translate to handstand push-ups, into ring dips, even to overhead pressing, okay? But training that, getting strong at that, doing high volume of easier versions where your midline does not move at all, your shoulder and hip are tight in the same line is critical. It's like, it'll make you better at so many things. Strict pull-up, same deal. People love the kipping pull-up because it's fun, it's more dynamic, it's more athletic, but you gotta be working towards your strict pull-up. And the same thing, there's really basic progressions. I have a video for both of these, but knowing how you can get better. The 3 basic drills that we use are doing something on the ground like ring rows or a pull-up bar or a barbell in the rack. So you're doing like an easier feet on the ground version of a pull-up. Just holding yourself over the bar, right? Can you hold the top position? And doing negatives, right? Negatives are really good for doing harder versions of what you can do in the opposite direction, right? So you can jump to the top. Ideally, you can hold and lower yourself slowly, right? Is a good way to get strong at strict pull-ups. So again, having a plan of action, how many reps and sets you can do to work on that if you don't have it, is something that, again, will make you so much better at kipping pull-ups and toes to bar, okay? So don't just focus on the technique of some of the more dynamic, fun stuff, but focus on the foundational strength of that. Swinging is that arch to hollow, midline stability, okay? That's kind of what we just talked about with shoulder mobility, is you need to be comfortable with that swing, that arch to hollow concept, okay? It translates to the rings, toes to bar, pull-ups, all that fun gymnastic stuff, okay? Olympic lifting, I talked about this. We dedicated our lives to this for a couple years as a gym and as a community. And the reason that Olympic lifts are so cool is that, remember that list of 10 general physical skills? This has almost all of them, except for like the stamina, endurance aspects, in just a single movement, right? To be able to do it properly requires so much athleticism. So a lot of people, I think it's not just intimidating, but it's kind of like, it's too much learning, right? Like, oh, it's so complicated. I just want to look good naked, you know? But the idea is that becoming an athlete makes you look good, right? That translates. And if you were to boil it down to something that's really, really effective, it embodies being an athlete, what you can do in a gym, performing Olympic lifts is that thing, right? And it also is very diagnostic. You can get frustrated doing it if you don't have mobility, if you're not very fast, right? You struggle with coordinated movements, right? It can be frustrating, but that's okay. It's a diagnostic. You're like, okay, I have something to work on, and the Olympic lifts can be a testing ground for you. Are you getting better at those movements, right? And then we're training all these other things to try to develop athleticism and see, are your Olympic lifts going up? Is your flexibility getting better? Are you getting faster? Are you getting stronger? Okay? In the Olympic lifting positions, the front rack, again, for guys, it's just a nightmare, right? For a lot of guys, trying to get the bar into this front rack position. If you cannot do that, it's not just the Olympic lifts that are going to be challenging, but things like wall balls, thrusters, right? This should be something that you work on regularly, okay? If you don't have a good front rack position, the keg drill that we did does help, right? Because we see people like this, right? It's that open shoulder position. This is something you can do when you get here early. So many of you guys get here early, hit your front rack position, hold the barbell on your back, or use a band to stretch, okay? But just think, you should work on it every day until you have it, okay? Approaching the movements, hang versus the floor. This is how we teach this, guys, if you don't know. The super basic way to approach these movements, if they're challenging for you, if you're new, from the hang is the learning spot. This is the easiest place to learn from. So if whether it's a snatch or a clean, you pick it up first, okay, and learn to use your hips. Okay, so I'm doing a clean, I pick it up, and from here, I do a clean. Super simple, right? For most people, that's not very complex. If I said, all right, put the bar on your shoulders, you're going to do a press, right? They pick it up and they would go like this, right? They would do some little mini Olympic lift. It is a natural movement, okay? And just focusing on hang without a squat is the most foundational way you can do it. You can break it up into parts. So you can do a deadlift, hang power, squat, right? What happens as you get better? You break those little pieces up, or shorter time in between. So it's stand, jump, squat, right? And all of a sudden you start to feel those positions as one. But in the beginning, you can break it up. So if it's a snatch, I can stand up, jump, do an overhead squat, right? Make sure you're feeling good positions. Feel confident about what you're doing. If it feels weird, if you're not making contact at the hip, right? Work from the hang for a while. Feel those positions, and then start working from the floor over time. Okay, those are the priorities I want you guys to think about. And never feel like you're not doing the right workout or anything like that if you are not feeling the movement or you feel like you're struggling, with the movement. The dumbbell versus barbell. That's more. The dumbbell is one of those things that's much different than a barbell, but I say, like, if you're having front rack issues, right, your wrists hurt, something like that, or you're struggling with a barbell overhead, dumbbells are just a nice way with less weight, gives you a similar stimulus. So don't be afraid to scale to a dumbbell if you ever need. If you guys haven't heard this analogy, it's dumbbells to the barbell is like rings to the pull-up bar. You guys ever heard that? Yeah, so the stability aspect makes a lighter weight more challenging. So that's the basics there. I didn't write it down, but it's obvious. Go to the barbell club if you haven't been there. Who here has never been there? You should go, right? It's just a different environment. So the barbells are much fancier. And a lot of people after they go are like, oh, it's kind of fun. So, all right, we have 2 more things to go through and we're going to be done. 2 big ones though. One is dealing with and avoiding injuries, and the other is going to be nutrition, which we're going to finish off on, okay? Dealing with and avoiding injuries, if you haven't heard me say here's my euphemism for injuries. Casualties of an active lifestyle. Injuries are unavoidable. Unavoidable. You can sit inside your house and just try not to get injured, and some shit's going to happen to you, all right? My dad had to get shoulder surgery from having a poorly ergonomically styled desk, right? He was reaching for his mouse for 12 years, right? And then he realized he had a frozen shoulder, right? Because he had never put his arm over his head for, it's ridiculous stuff, right? Injuries happen when you go out and do stuff. That's the reality, okay? Has anyone heard my Get Stronger story? I have this online. It's me getting hit by a car in my scooter.
Oh, yeah.
Has anyone heard that story? I'll tell it really quick. I used to manage Neptune's Net up in Malibu, right? I drove a Vespa up and down PCH 30 miles every day, 5 days a week for a couple years. And I knew, in my mind, I just knew I was going to get hit by a car someday. I'd always anticipated this moment. And so it was actually exactly what happened, exactly what I feared, was someone pulling off the shoulder, right? And so it was I was going south, just past Gladstone's on PCH, like I'm turning left, I'm looking ahead, and someone pulled off in front of me. So I didn't even hit my brakes. I didn't see them at all, which is, I think, a good thing. So 65 miles an hour, full speed, I smashed into the side of her van, right? And when I woke up, I had been passed out for some period of time, and people are looking at me, and I tried to stand up, and there was this god-awful pain in my hip, right? I was fucked up. And my initial thought was that I had broken my pelvis. That was what my instincts told me. But it was a dislocated hip, right? So what happened was I'm going this way really fast, and my knee hit her van, and it drove my hip out the back end, right? So the impact hit here, and it drove my hip out the back, right? And they take me to the hospital, and the doctor walks in all cheery and says, well, at least your femur's not sticking out of your ass. And he gives me this best case scenario, right? That more than 75% of those injuries include a broken femur. Because this is such a deep joint, it's so hard to dislocate. More than 3/4 of the time, you break your leg in the impact, right? So not only that, and then his joke was that there's a few people that the femur will actually pop out the asshole, right? And so, I'm laying there getting the good news, and I'm like, I squat, I do CrossFit, and I remember just thinking in my recovery, this is actually why I train, right? That when you think about a heavy back squat, the thing that people are so scared of, lifting heavy. I cannot tell you how many people are scared of lifting weight. What are the reasons they're scared? Give me 2 main reasons. Get injured. What's the other one that's really silly? They don't want to get bulky, right? Lifting heavy weights is not about getting bulky, right? Not about getting big muscles necessarily. But what it is a purposeful stressor on your body that is not just impacting your muscles, but your central nervous system, your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, right? So when you get comfortable and confident with your squatting movement or your lifting movements, right, to the point where you're pushing yourself and you feel safe, right, pushing your limits, you're okay with failure, this is where the good stuff happens, right? When I stand up, I fucking hate squatting. I'll deadlift all day long, right? But when I come out, if I have to do 1 rep max back squat, it's like my least favorite day ever, right? I just don't love it, right? And I come out of the squat rack, and my brain says what? Don't fucking do it. You're gonna kill yourself, right? And you have to literally go through that experience where you don't know if you're gonna do it, right? And it's just it's really fucking heavy, and you just, and you brace your whole body and you give it your best shot, right? Ideally, you stand up with it, and your body has gone through an experience, right? And so you do that often, You do that often enough, right? When you get hit by a car, it's not a completely foreign experience to your body. Your body is literally glued together better, right? The connective tissues are used to high stress, okay? That's what strength training is about. It reduces injury. It makes you harder to kill, okay? Really simple stuff. Take the snatch again, right? This one took me a while to figure out, but we lose people in skiing and snowboarding season to falling down, right? They fall down. Think about, right? Catching weight over your head, right? Receiving a load in your shoulder. Falling down, your wrist doesn't get hurt so easily. Your shoulder doesn't get hurt so easily, right? The idea here for me is I do CrossFit to make myself better at things outside the gym, right? That should be why most people are here. Some people, CrossFit is their sport, but the idea is that there should be a translation to our lives, right? And getting strong is one of the most misunderstood things. It frustrates the shit out of me. Chelsea said the best line about getting big as far as women, which was, I'm insulted they think it's easy to look like me. Right? Oh, you just touch a weight and you just woo, But that's what getting strong is about. It's how you approach the weightlifting, and your nutrition, of course, which will dictate the way your body responds. But purposefully stressing your body is what strength training is about. Okay? So that's where getting rid of your fear comes from, is quality movement and approaching it with this idea of it's good for you, right? Not bad for you. Warm up and cool down properly. This goes without saying, but a lot of people miss it. I see people all the time that get here early, like we recommend, and they're not doing anything, right? Know your limitations in movement. Know what you're working on. You should be warming up those positions. In cool down, you should do something in cool down. It's one of our biggest missing pieces, I would say, of our culture is because we prioritize the warm-up strength conditioning, and oftentimes the cool down is just not there the way I'd like it to be. We put it on you guys a lot to do it. We try some days, but you can see it. We have 10 minutes left in class. People are like, well, see you later. They just like, fuck yeah, get out of here early today, right? I try to give some recommendations. We do a little one on Wodify, but it's definitely something that we put on you guys more. And again, take your time to ease out. Foam roll, same thing when your body's really tired is when you have an opportunity to improve position. And find a routine that works for you, that works on your weaknesses and makes you ease out of that high intensity training, okay? I've labeled listen to your body as the hardest part of CrossFit, by the way. This is the hardest part. Are you tired because you didn't sleep last night, or are you overtrained and you actually need a day off? Is that pain in your shoulder something you should push through, or is that something that you should lay off of, right? People be like, oh, I'm just gonna push through it. Like, well, there's like, it's not that simple, People will be like, oh, my shoulder hurts. And I'm like, it's like, I don't know what it feels like, right? Is this a nagging thing? Is it new? Is it sharp? Is it dull? These are the hardest things, right? And how do we get better at that? By doing stuff. You have to go through the process. You have to learn to live like an athlete, right? People that have lived their whole lives as athletes have dealt with injuries their entire lives. And it's just part of the deal, right? People that have never been athletes and never done athletic training, they're scared. Oh my God, my shoulder hurts. I got to take a break, right? Oh my God, I don't know what's going on. And it's this fear of the unknown and how to deal with it. And we're trying to educate people that that's, it shouldn't be normal, right? But it's something you have to learn about. Learn where your limitations are. Learn how to address those things. Again, start talking about playing with lifestyle stuff. Oh, wow, I added on 2 hours of sleep a night and I feel amazing, right? Or I changed your diet and you feel better. There's so many variables that listening to your body is something that's a lifetime of practice. It's really hard, okay? Tendons and ligaments take 4 times longer to heal, right? Stop before it gets worse and figure out what is causing the issue. Go see Steve with any lingering issues. Steve. Right? Chronic inflammation could possibly be addressed through nutrition. So there's some basic info there. The number one thing I see people all the time is this. Do this. Like, and I say, what's going on over there? What's with the shoulder? Like, oh, I'm fine. Like, how long has that been there? Right? And you'll see people, they just, be like, are you doing anything for that? How long has it been there? And you could just see people don't address it. And this second one, I think, is the number one thing. I think it's the easiest thing that people could start doing. Stop before it gets worse. Do something about it. Scale. Don't do something that hurts. Just stop doing what you're doing for a period of time. Okay? Just because you do something different than class is okay. It's better than making it worse and having to take a legitimate break. People take really minor things and they just keep going and make them worse. Is that true? Yeah, see? Steve's just my yes man over there. But again, this is the learning process, and it's not easy. That's where hopefully you can rely on your coaches and some of the resources we have, and just get more confident with making the right decisions when they come around. Any questions on the injury stuff? No? All right. So this is the last bit, guys. Hi. Nutrition is the big thing I see people missing, right? They come in, they work their ass off, and they made the decision that they're doing CrossFit. They're all in, right? But they're missing this big piece, and people will say, like, it's not working. What they typically mean is my body is not transforming the way it's supposed to, right? And this is a multifaceted thing. It can be part nutrition. It can be your former athletic background. It can be sleep. It can be stress. But nutrition oftentimes is the one thing we see people aren't really giving enough credit to. Commonly, people think that because they're doing CrossFit, they can eat whatever they want. They actually believe that. I'm doing like the most intense shit ever, right? I probably burn like 1 million calories, right? The history of these talks is kind of the history of CrossFit and nutrition. Back in the day, CrossFit recommended the zone diet. Anyone know the zone diet? Right? Diligent weighing and measuring, they put food into blocks, which we did for a while, but it kind of confused people. It wasn't very natural. And then we pushed towards advocating for paleo, which is really the idea of eating quality whole foods more than anything. And the idea was that neither of those alone is proper. And we've ended up in some place in between. Instead of doing zone, we focus on calories, which is easier and more common language for people to use. And that quality matters over time. And we have this guide, and I'm going to get it up on the website. But if anyone wants this, I can send it to them. So we have Matt upstairs. Matt is an evolution of what's happened with our nutrition challenges. We would do nutrition challenges and we'd try to work people through this, and it's because of the individual aspect of your lifestyle, how much you cook, how much you travel, what you like to eat, if you're vegetarian, all these things. It's really hard to create a blanket set of rules for people. Some people want to gain muscle, some people want to lose excess body fat. Some people like their bodies, they just want to get better at CrossFit, right? And there's a lot of different variables. And Matt was kind of evolved out of people need to work one-on-one with a coach just like they do in their training. But we do have this really cool guide that if you're self-motivated, is pretty thorough and pretty straightforward. If you've never done anything, I'm going to go over the basics of how we approach it. And if you want it, let me know. And I'll get it on the website soon. But the idea is this. The first thing at the top, some stuff I've gone over, but the golden rules. Body composition is mostly about nutrition. Okay? So it's not mostly about your training. You can lose body fat doing next to nothing if you're at a caloric deficit and eat in a particular way. You might not be able to gain muscle, right? But you can't gain muscle no matter how. This is one of the things I want to ask women that are concerned about getting too bulky. What would happen if you lifted really heavy weights and didn't eat anything? What would happen?
I wouldn't be able to lift it.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like a crazy thought, right? Your muscles only grow if you give it the proper things to grow. I'm one of those guys that thought, I just can't gain weight. As much as I eat, I just can't gain weight. I can't gain muscle. I'm lifting, I'm doing everything I can. But the first time I actually sat down and did the math for the type of person that I am, which is a hard gainer, it is harder for me to put weight on. But I actually went through this process, followed the rules, and oh, magic, it worked. But I actually had to supplement both protein and carbohydrate because I didn't want to eat shitty food, but I needed to get the calories in somehow. And so once I actually saw the numbers and like what it would look like in real food, I was like, there's no way I could eat that much. I'd feel awful all the time. And so, but the truth was, so I was eating as much as I could, but it wasn't enough, right? And so once I actually saw the numbers that I was supposed to be hitting, boom, it worked, magic, right? And this me walking around going, oh, I can't do it. It's just the way I am, you know? And a lot of people go, fuck you for that, right? But yeah, we're all different. Our bodies are all different. And body composition changes. Nutrition is so fucking important, okay? Sleep and stress are important factors. We have people that say, I'm doing the diet perfectly, and it's not working. And I'll look at them and just see it like, you look like you sleep like 4 hours a day. You know, and you can just see it. Like they look overworked and they're stressed out and they're coming to the gym regularly and potentially telling me the truth that they're doing everything right with their diet. But if you're not sleeping properly, that's where your body recovers and finds those results. So without that, going through all those hard changes with nutrition might not be effective. And then the last one is what I just touched on, which is the quality of the food. So we're going to talk about calories and macronutrients as the primary thing you need to look at to start, right? Not the quality. Quality is second in our approach based on our studies, but quality really matters for long-term health, right? Inflammation within your body, right? Intestinal health, all of those things. Quality does matter, but for some people, starting there is too big of a challenge, okay? But know that it's one of those things that you have to get to in the long run. So here's the way our process works. We say, establish an 8-week goal, okay? Whatever it is, establish an 8-week goal. And people are like, I don't know what I can do in 8 weeks. Just like pick one thing. Say, I want to lose 5 pounds of body fat. I want to gain 5 pounds of muscle. I want to improve my mile time by 30 seconds. Whatever it is, pick something. Pick a goal. You're going to have 8 weeks to accomplish it with nutrition being your primary tool on top of your training. So then you write that down. Then we calculate calories, okay? So there's this really simple thing here where based on if you want fat loss, you want to maintain your weight or gain mass, if you were sedentary, moderately active, or very active, and then you multiply your body weight times these numbers. And it's going to give you a caloric number, right? Here's the calories you need to hit every day. This is generally speaking, okay? And the idea is you have to multiply times 12 to 14. You're like, well, which number do I do, 12, 13, or 14? Which one do I multiply it by? And this is where you think about, do you have an active job? Like for me, I have an active job, right? I don't sit down at a desk, so my multiplier should be higher. I need more calories generally, right? Are you someone that gains weight easily, yes or no, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So if you know that generally speaking, your body is the type that needs more or less calories, you can pick your number here. But the idea is we want to start with a baseline. And then based on your goals, your macronutrients, hard gainer, easy gainer, or mesomorph. Anyone know what mesomorph is?
It's like in between, basically. Right? So you can gain muscle relatively easy, but you also gain some fat at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's basically that they can lean out really easy and they can gain muscle really easy. Yeah. They're like genetically gifted, right? But you establish your protein, carbohydrate, and fat percentages of that caloric need. So you have these two ideas. What are your calories? And then how much protein, carbs, and fat. Okay? And here's what we do. The first step is we use MyFitnessPal, which is a food calorie counter. Right? It's got a pretty good database. It's not perfect. But the idea is just measure what you're doing now. Just say, okay, here's the goal. Here's what is optimal for me. Where am I at now? And you say, holy shit, I'm way off. Right? And you start looking at your diet, and you can actually come up with like, okay, well, if I substitute my oatmeal in the morning for 2 eggs and some bacon, that'll shift my macronutrients a little bit, and I'll be closer to hitting my goal, right? And the idea is to start figuring out how you can hit those goals. And the unfortunate part in the beginning is if you've never done this, right, it sucks, right? You have to measure, you're like, I don't know how much a quarter pound is. You don't really have any concept of anything. It sucks. And you're like, going through this moment in your head of like, I can't believe I'm measuring my food. I've become that person, right? But the goal is like everything else. You get to know yourself. You get to know how this process works. And the story is always that of a butcher. Can I get a pound of ground beef? And he just, boom, 1.01. He nails it first try because he's done it a million times, right? Over time, you don't need a scale. You can look at your food and you have an understanding of what you should be eating, right? But you have to go through that educational process. That's why Matt is a good resource for a lot of people. But if you're willing to go through it, you set your standard, you see where you're at, you make some changes, and you start chipping away until all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm hitting those numbers, right? You start figuring out how that's possible, how to live your life that way, right? And then ideally the gains start coming. You know what's unfortunately possible? Your calories might be off a little bit your first try. You're like, shit, it's not working. You got to adjust the calories a little bit. And it becomes a tweaking game, right? And here's the interesting part as well, I think, for nutrition, and as far as the eating one way or another. Let's say you lean out. What happens then? Your numbers change, right? And then you want to maybe gain some muscle. You have to, now your diet has to change. You can't keep eating the same way because you don't want to keep losing weight, right? You have to move into a maintenance phase, which is nicer for a lot of people, right? You get to eat more carbs, right? So your diet changes as your training changes, as your body composition changes. You have to revisit this approach. And ideally, over time, you get more comfortable eyeballing stuff. You don't actually have to measure stuff, but you'll use this as just kind of like a guideline for where you're at right now. Does that make sense? I don't know if there's anything else here. The general estimate, so there's a lot of words here that you guys can read. But the way that we tell people to look at it, if you are never going to use a scale, but want to estimate just visually, is think about protein on your plate, about the size and thickness of your palm. And every meal gets some protein. If you're trying to lose weight or lose excess body fat, the only meal that you get starchy, carby type foods is the meal immediately after your workout. Every other meal along with that meat is green leafy veggies. Lots of veggies, as much as you want, really. I tell people, when I look at food, when I look at a plate, in my mind, everything goes into a category: protein, carbs, fat, right? And I have this idea of what I should be eating. And when I look at lettuce, you know what my mind sees? Water. It's like I literally don't consider it to be food. It's just like filler. There's so little calories in lettuce, you know, like iceberg lettuce, you know? It's like in my mind, it's like water. But the idea is that you have to focus on being satiated, right? Hitting those macronutrients. And then the other one that people struggle with is the fat. I was mind blown a month ago. I was having a conversation about food, and I said something about healthy fats, and someone was like, oh, healthy fats. She thought I was joking. She legitimately thought I was kidding, like that healthy fats was an oxymoron that didn't exist, right? Fats are fucking key, critical, right? And having understanding of what those foods are is important. Over time, I wish everybody cooked their own food and went food shopping and did all that stuff. That's something that is a life skill I think people need to develop. But again, that's something that is really dependent on, you know, what you experienced growing up, what your life is like now, and something that isn't necessarily easy for people to adopt right away. But I encourage everyone to look into that just like any other life skill. Just start. My dad's joke was when he started cooking, like, Gene, that's my dad's name, I didn't know you could cook. And he would say, yeah, I can read. Right? He thought cooking isn't hard. You just do what it says. Right? But I realized talking to people that they're like, I don't know, salt and pepper to taste? Saute? Chop? Fuck? You know? It's like, it can be intimidating, right? So anyway, nutrition is something to play with. Let me know if you want me to send this to you. I will. And we made it to closing thoughts. So there's a couple kind of random thoughts here. Believe you are an athlete. Even if you're not an elite level athlete, you were all an athlete, you're all born to do this stuff. Okay? If you didn't play sports when you were younger, if you don't have a background steeped in it, you have more time to build a foundation. Okay? Those that did this type of training when they were younger, they do have an advantage. One of my dreams is to get this stuff into PE class. You know, I think if everyone that I work with, every adult walking through the door, did this stuff when they were kids, my job would be so much easier, right? But unfortunately, that's not true. PE is not given any real educational backbone, right? It's just a fuck around class, and not even mandatory for a lot of kids anymore. But when you're looking at some of this scary amount of things you need to improve on, whether it's nutrition or movement, just pick something short term, right? And it will translate to your long-term goals of getting fit. Pick something and commit to it 100%. I wrote, don't be afraid of being that guy or girl. The most fun is accomplishing your goals, feeling good and looking good. When people do, let's say, a nutrition challenge, right? And it sucks really bad, right? All the sacrifices they're making. And when they get to the end and they like lost some weight or they look better, they feel better, no one ever looks back at that point and goes, nah, it wasn't worth it, right? When you hit that goal, every other person in your life that gave you shit, like every sacrifice was so worth it every time. And it's such a blip on the radar. But what I see most people don't do is they want to be able to do one foot in, one foot out. They want to be able to do both. And I say, just fucking go all in. Just on this one thing, just pick one thing and just dedicate to it. Let everything work around that. All right? And when you accomplish that goal, move on to the next one. Developing that habit is important. Trying to do everything all at once is where we all know this, right? Everyone knows you can't do everything at once. So just commit to something. And for some people, you know, if you want to get fit and you want to look and feel like an athlete, it's going to be years of this, right? Of this type of process and approach. But take it one thing at a time, okay? This is something I talk to about my dedicated CrossFit athletes. Get outside the gym. Everything is everything, right? CrossFit was not designed to be a standalone sport. There are things lacking in CrossFit. Does anyone know what they are?
Lateral movement.
Yep, lateral movement. We don't do much this way, right? What else?
Hand-eye coordination.
Kinda. Yeah, I'll give you that. Wall balls. What else?
Like interval training.
Rotational movements. We don't do a lot of rotational stuff. And you think about both lateral and rotational stuff, hand-eye coordination, a lot of that stuff that you'll find in sport, right? So the idea was more that CrossFit was the meat and potatoes strength and conditioning for whatever it is that you were doing. The fact that it became a standalone sport was, you know, like I said, kind of accidental. And so this is where doing things outside the gym, I say, like, when you go surfing, anyone surf? Anybody? It's free, guys. There's an ocean right there. I have surfboards. But you're in this prone position, right? Where I'm pulling my chest up constantly. I get this nice endurance effort of keeping my back flexed, let alone a million reps of like a, you know, shoulder exercise. But things translate, okay? Something that a lot of the competitive athletes find therapeutic and beneficial to their training is rock climbing, right? Our hands in this system are one of the weaker parts, right? Anytime you're doing high volume stuff, holding on, right? But it's not just your grip strength, but it's this coordination, right? These kind of odd angles, using your foot and hooking and body tension, right? It's this and that together. Get outside, do stuff. I do my best, try to do something once a month to get people outside the gym. And again, even if you're not good, it's like anything else. Just get into it. It has a positive impact just for trying. And then email me, or if you have a coach that's your coach, ask questions, right? Like I said, we have a lot of resources. There's a lot going on here if you're not sure. We have a Gym Members and Friends Facebook group, if you guys don't know. It's spelled just like this, Gym Members and Friends, where we post stuff. And then the weekly email. Hopefully you guys all read that. Who checks the programming in advance for the week? Yeah? I said I can see the numbers. I can see the numbers. Yeah. 280 people instantly. Boom! They're like, so there's like another, you know, it's like just over 50% of the gym checks it. Other half like, I'm just going to show up. And then this is my last slide, guys. Accountability. This is a big part of what our gym is about. Nothing is a secret here. Everything's free online, right? A lot of what we do here is about having a place that you like to go work out. I've been saying this forever. People have talked a lot of shit about CrossFit over the years for a variety of reasons, right? CrossFit didn't invent anything. There's no movements here that are brand new. It's the community. It's the fact that people were willing to show up, that they were excited about it, that made it so effective, right? People will say that they have the best training system ever, but if you're not willing to do it, it's not effective at all, right? And CrossFit is not any one thing, one program. It's an idea, right? that you should be able to perform these functional movements. You should be able to run long, run short and fast, lift heavy, do coordinated movements, right? And it's this constant struggle to try to get there. And the movements that we perform ideally are the most effective to get you there. But part of it is being held accountable, that you have a community of people here, a coach here, a training partner, whatever it is that keeps you motivated and keeps you coming back. So try to set that up for yourself in some way, whether it's someone that you see here, or a coach, or some level. Give yourself something, and that's really, really helpful to, working through the process. And then last is just letting me know if you guys have any thoughts. Everything we've ever done, like I said, when we went through some programming changes, was based on feedback we got from the community. Matt is a development of feedback we got from people. Steve is a development of feedback we got from people. The Barbell Club, all this stuff is an outgrowth of just getting feedback and trying to continue to help you guys. So don't think that, it's just a silly thought. Like when I hear the same thing a couple times, I'll try to figure out how I can make it happen. That's basically it. If you guys have any questions, that's it. Thanks, guys. I'm going to email all of you. So make sure your name is on that sign-in sheet.